All right, good evening. Welcome to our regular city council meeting, March 16th, 2026. Just like to recognize that Madam Mayor Lewis is out of town advocating for us back in Washington, D.C. But we'll get started with the pledge. Sage, could you please wait?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you for that. We will now go to our consent agenda. These items have been vetted through different council committees and have been deemed to be appropriate for approval on the consent agenda. Any item on the consent agenda may be removed by any member of council for individual consideration. With that, I'll take a motion.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
And second.
All right, moved and seconded. Great, so we will now head into our public comment item of the.
Drew, we need a vote on that, a roll call
Oh,
vote.
thank you.
Yep.
This is
Some places you do and some places you don't. I mean, really.
so
Yeah, we'll do
yes. All right, Evan.
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
Scott. All right, and I am an aye. I can vote on this one. That's right. Thank you for that, rookie here sitting in for mayor's seat. So, all right, so we will now go into our public comment. With that, it'll be for the next 15 minutes. Any member of the public could come up for 3-minute increments as long as nothing is pending on our agenda or also planning and zoning or the Board of Adjustments. And I'll be keeping track of the timer, but we invite any member of the public to come up for that 3-minute time period.
Nope, we got someone. Oh, perfect.
Oh, you're right. Thanks for being here. If you could just give us your name and your address here, that'd be great.
Name and address?
Yeah.
Jeff Perley, Perley, 706 North Lincoln Street in Musco. I'm here to just make my comments on the proposed stage in East City Park. And I have some prepared comments here. So members of the council and fellow residents, for over 40 years, the East City Park stage was more than just a structure. It was a testament to the sweat equity of Moscow. It was built by volunteers, repaired by neighbors, and funded by the community's own generosity. Today, we are standing on the edge of replacing that legacy with a $900,000 project. Excuse me, I'm really short of breath. I actually ran across 3rd Street.
Stairs don't help either. I
Think about
get
that,
it.
yeah. And the stairs. Need to get in better shape. So now it's a $900,000 project that risks trading our town's character for a structure even the mayor has described as soulless. We need to hit the pause button on this project for 3 critical reasons. First, the financial shift is unacceptable. What began as a plan for grants and donations has quietly become a massive burden on the taxpayers. When our roads are becoming a social idiom for how bad they are, we cannot justify spending nearly $1 million on a permanent concrete stage that the same money could be used to be fixed an entire city block of roads. So second, the 14 response is not a mandate. 14 responses is not a mandate. To claim, quote, unanimous support, unquote, based on a private meeting and 14 written comments is an insult to the thousands of residents who call Moscow home. A project of this scale and cost demands genuine, widespread public buy-in. Finally, we are ignoring smarter alternatives. A high-quality portable stage would cost a fraction of the price, preserve our precious green space, and even generate revenue by being leased to others. So let's return to volunteer-centered spirit that built Moscow. Let's delay this vote, reopen the discussion, and find a solution that reflects our actual needs and our unique community character. Let's build something we're proud of, not something we're going to be stuck with. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. All right.
Jonathan Honish, 520 Empire Lane, Trailer 6, Moscow. Just wanted to give my agreement with what was just said.
Thank you. Any other members? We'd welcome that at this time. Okay, hearing or not seeing anyone anxious to stand to the mic, we will drop that mic and move on to our regular agenda item and over there. All right, so we are going to be having a commission assistance report from Planning and Zoning with Mike Ray and Dennis Wilson. So welcome.
Thank you, Council. Yeah, just here tonight to introduce Dennis Wilson. He's the chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and is it third year? Got reelected this last year, so here he is tonight and gets to.
Good evening, Council. Mayor Drew for this evening. Thanks for having us. Want to start out by saying, love the new faces. And thank you guys for committing, for running, for getting up here, going out there and doing it. Big kudos to you. Planning and zoning tonight, we shouldn't take too much of your time. Annual report. We'll talk a little bit about our projects that we're doing, some education, and we'll start out with our intros here. Uh-oh. How you do it? Remember Dennis, of course, the chair. We got Rich Beebe right behind me that steps up anytime. And if I'm not there or Joel or Rich is not there, Cole will step up. Whoops. I go back now. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right. And then we got Joel and Nels, Victoria and Sue. Those guys bring valuable information for us as long as they've been there. And then we got Sage stepped in for our council liaison. We missed Bryce, but welcome in Sage. We'll move on to some of our projects here. One of them has been the area of city impact, where the Senate Bill 1403 in 2024 significantly changed the ACI requirements in the Idaho Code, where it can't include areas that aren't expected to be annexed within the next 5 years. Shall not divide county recognized parcels of land. County roads are now required to be adopted in the ACI. And this deadline for the municipalities to comply with state statute was December 31st, 2025. And we accomplished it on the city state worked together with the commission to bring the ACI to compliance with the state code. Our board, county commissioners adopted the amendments on December 2nd, 2025. And there's kind of a map of what transpired, what took place before and after city limits. You can see where it's a little bit shrunk. And then we went on, we're talking about the duplex code amendments. Recent building permit applications and construction plans have been submitted for structures represented as two-family dwellings, but which are designed and leased as multi-family dwellings. It appears the structures are being represented as two-family dwellings to avoid various local, federal, and state requirements. Commission has been working on a code amendment to clarify existing definitions and mitigate the impacts of these structures on surrounding neighborhoods. And then our continuing education, we've had Nels Peterson come in, gives us an annual update on the Hills and River Housing Trust projects and discuss potential code amendments that might help with housing affordability. Commission has been tracking and recently reviewed trends in the ADU construction within the city. And that's about all we have. And open it up for questions if you guys have any. Thank you again.
I do.
Yeah, Scott, please.
I say Mike can answer if you have anything.
No,
Thank you, guys.
no,
Yeah.
the duplex.
Yeah.
I know that's coming up. And you guys have talked about it a few times.
Yeah.
I know housing's such a big issue, and there's going to be a balance between, what people are trying to do to get creative and as well as this. And I know we as a body are eventually going to hear it if it changes city code. I was just curious of how much input you guys have had in your meetings with people coming and talk about maybe some of the unintended consequences of some of the code changes that you guys are looking at or discussed.
I don't think we've had anybody come and talk yet, have we? No, it's just been us yet. We're expecting some before it passes, like the 27th, we have legislation. Is that what it was? Yeah.
Yeah, we're waiting for the end of the legislative session to see if there's any bills that affect this, but yeah, planning on next month if that doesn't happen, but there'll be a public hearing before Planning and Zoning Commission, and obviously a public hearing before City Council, but it's mainly just been Rich, who's a commissioner that's involved in construction trade, that's been giving some good feedback. He's a member of the commission, so.
Yeah, but no one else. But like I said, I think we expect someone that comes down to it. We'll see. But yeah, thanks. Anything else?
Questions, Scott, or?
If I don't have any questions, I'll just say appreciate you being here and the work you guys do.
All right, appreciate you guys too. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
My only question is, with all the changes I went through, did that come as a surprise to you all? Were you ready for that? With the legislative changes in the roads and what you just settled up, or was it a surprise?
Can be.
Was it a surprise though, or no?
No, I don't think so.
Good.
Yeah. Aaron, you got something?
Yeah, have you heard anything back, positive or negative, about the shrinking of the area of impact? Has that been viewed by any landowners in a good or bad way?
I have not.
Well, it's relatively new. So it was just amended last December. And so we're 3-4 months in. But largely a lot of the county codes that were adopted are similar to what the city had. And so it was fairly, I wouldn't say identical, but it was really similar. The county worked to rezone a lot of the properties out there to zoning districts that were in the county, not the city, because that was one of the changes. We have to adopt the county codes within the area of city impact, whereas before we could have adopted, and we did, city codes within that area. And so that was the big change, was kind of going through the allowed uses and pretty much adopting a comparable zoning district for a lot of those properties. But the county was more involved than we were, because it's essentially on the Board of County Commissioners to adopt those changes and conduct the hearings now. But I haven't heard anything one way or the other on that. Probably not a whole lot of impact to the area city impact. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mike?
No, I got one for you, Dennis. I'm just kidding. No, we appreciate planning and zoning. Before I got on council, I was there for 2.5 years or something. It was great learning from Dennis. And so
All right. Thank you.
thank
guys.
you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, next up on our regular agenda, we will be having the U.S. Highway 95 Palouse Regional Study Plan Report. And this is just a report given to us. There will not be any comment from the public at this time, but just reviewing a report. And so thank you for being here, Janet. So.
Council for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. I just wanted to come out to get the word out about our public meeting that we're going to have. It's March 26th at the Best Western from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's an in-person opportunity to talk with our engineers, our experts, and folks within ITD, go through the different concepts that the team has developed. There's a lot of different things on the table because we're looking at near-term, midterm, long-term solutions. And so understanding that it's a lot to digest, and we wish we could be there longer, but at some point we have to go to bed. We also have the online public meeting. We're starting it ahead. We heard from our last public meeting that was very helpful because there are so many different concepts, and it's a very complex corridor looking from Snow Road on 95 all the way up to the Benewah County line. That's a very large area to consider. So we're starting the online public meeting March 19th, and it's running through April 9th. And we positioned the in-person in the middle of that time frame to give folks the opportunity to look at it online, come with questions. If you don't have time, our email address is available on the website. I also have a few handouts if anybody wants them. So you can reach out directly to me or anybody on the project team with any questions that you have. The other update that I have, this study, this time, we're going to have folks set up for other projects in the ITIP. The State Highway 8 project has shifted focus to a traffic study. We let our traffic engineers kind of dig into the data, look at possible solutions, and locate those geographically on the earth. Our concern with State Highway 8 was the geometry. There's narrow shoulders, tight curves. And so we weren't sure if we were going to be able to add all of the passing opportunities, all the safety projects that we wanted to on the existing alignment. Thankfully, now that we've had time to sharpen our pencils, look at it with more detail, we can. And so the rigorousness of a Pell just really didn't apply to the State Highway 8 project. And so we've shifted that focus to a traffic study. You can still get information about State Highway 8 from that same website. The link is available. We'll have folks at the public meeting to give an update. But it's just a process that gets us more quickly to construction projects that are fundable. So just because State Highway 8, there's some pretty low-hanging fruit that we could easily move forward as safety projects. We decided to shift course and kind of save funds on the planning side and move as quickly as we can to submitting for projects on the construction side. That's all that I had. I just wanted to let people know. Hope that everybody can attend one way or another, whatever is most accessible for you. And please feel free to reach out to me or anybody else on the team with any questions.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
We
you.
we received, at least I received some mail talking
Oh,
about these
perfect.
dates. And so
Yep.
two of them actually, which I appreciate.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And then thank you for being here. I think some of those pamphlets that you said, if you don't mind leaving a couple behind. And I guess just to the general public, we've talked about this several times. You can find lots of things online at our meeting. And yeah, so thank you for being here. We appreciate it. So, all right. Next item is our annual comprehensive financial report presentation with Renee Track and Nick Nicholson. So, welcome. Hello.
If you don't know me, I'm Renee Tack from the Finance Department. As you may be aware, the city is required to have audited financial statements every year. And we're here today, as you said, to present the 2025 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, also known as ACFR, for your acceptance, which has been audited by Presnell Gage. And as stated in the agenda, the city received the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting from the Government Finance Officers Association for the last 22 years, including the report that we submitted for fiscal 24. With your approval of the fiscal 25 ACFR, it will be submitted to GFOA in hopes of getting the award for the next year. And there's a lot of people to thank for helping put this report together. It includes every individual from the finance staff, individuals from nearly every department in the city. Assistance ranges from providing information to assist in completing year-end accounting, following year-end guidelines, assisting or attending meetings to gather information and preparing sections of the management discussion and analysis. That's a big part of the report. And I'd also like to thank our audit committee for providing input and recommendations and reviewing our draft report. And every year, the ACFR could not be completed without the assistance of all of those that I've spoken of and probably some others. So today, Presnell Gage, Nick Nicholson is here to present our audited financial statements and the results of the audit. And I'll leave it off for him.
Thanks, Renee.
Thank you, Renee. I believe we have a presentation. Slideshow.
Let's go there. Something.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. My name's Nick Nicholson. Got a few new faces this year. So I work for Presnell Gage. We've been performing the audit of the city of Moscow for quite some years. I didn't go back and count, but yeah, well over 10 years. So we really appreciate working with the city and always look forward to completing the audit. So As I kind of dive right in, we'll go through kind of some overarching high level look at the financial statements. The financial document is well over 100 pages, so we're not going to go page by page and keep you here all night. So we will try to hit some high points and really just touch on what the process is and some key financial highlights as part of the audit. With that being said, really the first thing I like to tell any board that we come into is really what an audit entails and really what the purpose of it is. Obviously, everybody thinks of a financial statement as a bunch of records and items that are accumulated. And ultimately, a lot of people think that that's really the role of the auditor is to create that document. And the reality is the information in the audited financial statements is really the information that you have seen throughout the years. It's nothing new to you. And ultimately, it's the responsibility of your management to provide that information. So I always make a joke, but then most boards will then ask, well, what is your role then if the financial statements aren't your role? And really our role is to test the information and then come up with an opinion on those financial statements and provide our opinion on whether they are accurate and within standards. And so that's really the role of an auditor. The opinions on the financial statements, there's actually multiple opinions on the financial statements. There is opinions on the financial statement, the financial information, and there's also two other opinions, one on internal controls over the financial reporting, basically the structure and on compliance. And then there's also you guys, because you receive a significant amount of federal funding, there's a third one that's on the Single Audit Act. The Single Audit Act is if you have spent, used to be $750,000, now it is $1 million of federal financial assistance, you actually have to have an extra set of testing on those financial programs, the federal programs alone, and how they're operating and making sure that they are in compliance with their regulations. So it's kind of a separate additional audit that we have to provide an opinion on. So with that being said, all of those financial statements and all of the information within the financial statements are part of what is Renee referenced as the annual comprehensive financial report. All of those go into that and create that report that is governed by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board and is in compliance with generally accepted accounting principles. Basically, that is the structure of the financial statements. Within those financial statements, I guess the first opinion on the actual financial statements as a whole, there are actually multiple sets of financial statements according to a couple different standards. The first one is what we like to call the government-wide financial statements. Those financial statements, there's a statement of activities and a statement of net position. Those are, in layman's terms, a balance sheet and an income statement, but they are governed by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board and are in a structure that really isn't what you guys normally see on a day-to-day basis when you're making your decisions, because they are governed in a way to compare you to every other entity that exists, including for-profit corporations and nonprofits and other governmental agencies. And the role of that is primarily is for financing situations. So if you guys were to go out to a bond and wanted to issue bonds, the bank would review those set of financial statements in order to determine your, I guess, lendability or ability to pay back that information or those finances. So that is really the role of that set of financial statements. We'll go through some highlights of that, but ultimately probably not the most relevant to your guys' decision making. The other sets of financial statements are on what we call a fund financial statements or a modified accrual, which is more of a budgetary style basis, which for you guys is much more applicable because, for example, debt. In the business world, you have debt, you put your debt on your balance sheet and you pay down your principal and you expense your interest. Well, in the in the budget world, you want to know how much was the payment this year? How much do we have to fund in order to meet our debt needs for the year? And that's ultimately how you guys operate, is on that year-to-year basis on a budgetary style. And so those are the primary differences. Capital assets is another one where you depreciate your capital assets on the GASB statements versus on the fund statements. We've got a project, we're going to budget $1.5 million for this project. That's what we're going to spend and have the available resources. So we provide opinions on both sets of financial statements. And we kind of, yep. The opinion, oh, actually, the very bottom. So the opinions that we have placed, so of those 3 opinions, we have placed unmodified opinions on all of those. Unmodified is kind of a fancy legal term for a clean opinion from us. We have no modifications on the information or on your internal control structure that we would say would make us feel like the financial information isn't materially correct, and that your internal controls are structured properly. They are operating properly throughout our testing. So good job. Kudos. That is our highest level of, I guess, opinion that we can give. It doesn't sound as glowing as everybody wants us to, it's not a gold star, but unmodified is what you're aiming for. So good job on that. Good job to your staff in the city on that. With that being said, I'm going to kind of jump into some highlights, little small on there, but ultimately on the first set, the government-wide statements, your net position, which in layman's terms is kind of your equity, increased by about 11%, so that your equity or your net position is just over or almost $212 million across all of your individual funds. Those include your governmental, general funds and your water, sewer, garbage, all of those combined. Of that 211 million, there is it's kind of broken down into restricted, unrestricted areas where there is that equity, but there's some of it that is structured that you can't go and spend it. A lot of it is tied up in your actual physical property, plant, and equipment assets, which isn't what you can operate on a day-to-day basis. So there's amounts restricted for that purpose. And then there's also amounts restricted that you're not allowed to spend. For example, probably a couple of the highlighted ones there for debt service. You have to have bond covenants say, oh, you've got to set aside this amount for future bond payments. There are highway user tax fees that you can't spend for just any purpose. They are set aside for a specific purpose. And also, like the Hamilton's will is a great example. That money was given to the city with a specific purpose in mind, and so it's not spendable unless it meets those requirements. So on the business type activity side, the water, sewer, garbage, stormwater, there is a restricted net position of about $50 million. And that is a large portion of that is basically restricted for those. When I say restricted, it can't be spent for the general operations of the city. It is specifically restricted for the operations of that fund. Basically, it has to provide for the water department or the sewer department and those activities. Another thing that I'll highlight there, total government-wide operating expenses. You can kind of see a trend there, fairly similar with prior years of just under $45 million of operating expenses. Basically, that's what it costs to operate the city of Moscow completely this year. That's from your water, sewer, garbage to your general government expenditures. So. The second set of financial statements on the fund statements, it's got a more of a highlight of what is called your major programs. So it'll actually give, rather than looking at the city as a whole, it actually separates those out into your kind of major funds and your non-major funds. Major funds, it's a mechanical calculation. Basically, the government funds, which are non-business type, if a fund reaches either assets, liabilities, revenue, or expenditures, if it's 10% of the total government funds or 10% of the total water, sewer, garbage of those combined, if it's 10% of those, or 5% of the overall government, that fund is considered to be a major fund and has to be highlighted on its own. So the major governmental funds are the general fund, your street fund, your rec and culture fund, your capital projects funds, and your Hamilton funds. Your non-major funds are like the 1912 Center, the Transit Center, those kind of smaller funds. The enterprise funds, water, sewer, sanitation, stormwater, all major funds.
Nice catch.
Obviously, the main highlighted fund, the largest fund, is the general fund. That's really to account for all financial resources and activity that can't be accounted for in a special fund. It's the catch-all of everything that doesn't fall into a specific area, and it's just the chief operating fund. So. And then your special revenue funds, basically those are ones that have revenues that are specifically for a purpose and so have a separate set. Here's kind of a trend, and this is ultimately your fund balance. This is your fund balance is basically your carryover amount, what you have to operate going forward. And so you can see kind of the trend in 2023, you kind of had a larger, that was really due to COVID's kind of funding as it came, it built up some funds, and now you guys have spent those for the purposes that basically they were allowed for. So you've come back almost into the kind of the normal of where the trends normally lie. Just over 6 million of carryover in the general fund. Now, I would like to highlight 6 million, or actually it might even be just above 7 million now that I say that. That number sounds big. It sounds, to a regular person coming from the outside, okay, yeah, the city's got $7 million. If there's why am I still paying taxes? Well, the reality is that money has specific purposes that it's also earmarked for. So there's restricted amounts, and the largest portion is about just under 5.2 million. The city has a required 3 months reserve. And so that is the largest portion that you have a working capital restriction. So outside of really extenuating circumstances, that money can't be touched or drawn down. So that is the biggest portion of that. So the idea that, $6 or $7 million is out there to spend is not a reality. The reality is there's probably about $1 million, and it can be assigned for anything from like compensated absences, future, to pay for vacation and sick leave held out there. Really, the unassigned, basically, fund balance of the general fund that is not earmarked for anything, doesn't have anything tied to it, is about 349,000 of unassigned. So that is probably a more accurate number of, okay, if we didn't have any money come in for a few days or a month, what would we be able to operate on? And it's that amount. So here's just kind of, we'll kind of go through this. This is really what the general government expenditures. This is really the areas that the general government operating. Public safety, obviously, police, code enforcement, fire, public health, engineering, those kind of things fall under the public safety. And here's kind of a trend of the general fund revenues between the general government operations and the public safety, and really the trend of revenue is that line there of how it's being funded. So you can see you were really in the general fund almost a break-even point in 2025. You raised and spent almost the same amount. Obviously, general government being the largest portion of expenditures with public safety there underneath of it. Another major fund, your rec and culture. Really, what is it? It's your parks, your recreation, your swimming pool, youth center, the HERC, the 1912 arts and community. Those are really what falls under that. And here's kind of a recap of how that money is spent. Obviously, the biggest portion of it is really just your cultures and recreation programs. There's small amounts for the 1912 Center. The Community Playfields Fund has had a small amount of expenditures as well. And then Hamilton is but primarily just the operations of the Culture and Rec Department. The street fund here is, I made this one a little bit different this year. So those two lines, the top line that goes through there, that's really the revenues of the street fund. And the other one is the trend of transfers in. And really the difference, but why that seems so different and why they're going apart is this last year, I guess the rules and regulations dictated that transfers between interfunds for services, so other funds giving services to the street fund, those used to be recognized as transfers from one fund to the other to operate. And they really kind of changed the definition that said, no, if it's for that service, we want it to be a revenue versus a transfer. We want this fund to expense it and this fund to call it a revenue. So you can see there's really very little transfers from other funds to help fund the street fund. It's really gone into the revenue side of it. And so you can see that's really what that's trying to show is how that fund is being funded on a day-to-day basis.
But it hasn't changed. They're just.
It hasn't changed. So the numbers really haven't changed other than basically what pool the revenue goes into. The same amount of money flows into it, I guess you can see it. It is increasing slightly as budgets go up, but ultimately the funding sources are being charged the same thing. It's just what bucket it falls in.
Thank you.
On this, another set of financials. So the government-wide statements, they break out governmental funds and then your business type funds, the enterprise, your enterprise, water, sewer, garbage, stormwater, and including those capital projects. They have a separate set of financial statements as well. And those actually are reported consistently on a business style because they operate like a business. Here is kind of some highlights. The water fund, you can see basically a trend of the expenses of the water fund have kind of leveled out over the last couple of years, obviously 2021, 2022. You guys have reduced the expenses of the water fund quite a bit. You can see kind of the steady trend of revenue as fees increase and how that fund is operating. So in reality, you can see in 2024 and 2025, the water fund has kind of leveled out its capital expenditures, but I believe you guys have a fair amount of water projects in the making, and that's ultimately why that revenue number is above the expenditure, is really that money is being set aside for future capital outlay. As you can see, and that kind of shows, so here's your net position, basically your carryover. The carryover for water and water capital projects, water general operating fund is pretty steady with prior years, whereas the capital projects fund increasing in the amount. And the same discussion with sewer, you can see the expenditures and revenue, and same trend. Sewer capital projects accumulating some funds for some future capital outlay. Stormwater, it began in 2022. What became a new fund, and so you can kind of see the trend of expenditures there. Some initial expenditures to get that up and operating, and it has kind of leveled out. And obviously, as it continues to operate, it's starting to build up its net position. The last of those, the sanitation fund, pretty steady. That one doesn't fluctuate a lot because ultimately that's just an agreement with the sanitation provider and revenue from user fees. So the capital projects pretty steady, and as well as just the sanitation carryover. Those are kind of the highlighted items that I had for you. So I will entertain any questions at this point.
Any questions?
Yeah, I'm curious about whether or not there's a time limit on future capital outlays, whether we can collect funds for 6 years, 8 years, 10 years, because we identify projects out to 15 years, but can we actually start funding those before 8 years?
I don't believe there is a specific year, but you guys ultimately are the decision makers. So if you guys had a contract out there, the contract could steer how those funds are accumulated. But ultimately, it is up to the city to,
Yeah, Councilor Holmes. Yeah, there isn't a time limitation on capital accumulation, and so we have large projects, for example, in the sewer fund or the water fund that we identify that, as you said, maybe out a decade, and we'll start accumulations in advance. Annually, those accumulations are approved by the city council through our capital budget, and so as we bring forward that capital improvement plan to the city council, those annual accumulations are approved by the city council. So you'll see those, but yeah, there isn't a specific time limit on the amount of time we can accumulate toward a project.
Yeah, it's more of a philosophic thing than whether to charge a lot close to the project or accumulate.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, I had a question. So you had mentioned, I think 349,000, if
Yeah.
I recall, of kind of unassigned capital fund, and then of that total capital fund of 7 million. So roughly 5%. Is that typical of governmental?
It's pretty
budgets?
consistent for the
Okay.
way you guys have operated, and it's pretty consistent with your historical balance. As far as whether it's healthy or not, I would say, given the amount of expenditures, it's a fairly healthy amount. Really, a lot of government funds don't. They don't accumulate kind of the rainy day fund. So you guys have that 3-month of revenue, budgeted revenue that you guys set aside for the rainy day. So really the 349 is to operate the general operations as it goes forward. And so I would say it's probably a healthy amount. You guys do have gaps, as most governments do, where you don't receive consistent revenue, because one of your primary property taxes, you get 2 checks a year, essentially. I mean, you get them monthly, but 2 primary checks. So you've got to operate. Sometimes you've got to be able to meet payroll or whatever. So 349,000, I would say, is healthy. It's definitely not above what I would recommend. And maybe if I were to recommend, I might even say you could go a little bit higher, because it ultimately, what did I say for the general government? I don't have the numbers in front of me. The operations of the year, several $1 million, 349,000 of that really only operates you on a day-to-day basis of probably under a month, I would imagine. And so if something were to happen, you do have the rainy day fund, the set aside, but ultimately that 349,000 would go away fairly quickly, and you would then have to, okay, are we going to cut into that rainy day fund? Does this meet the requirements of that? So,
Thanks.
Yep.
Scott?
Mine will be quick. The Certificate of Achievement of Excellent Financial Reporting. Is that something that is it something that a lot of cities get, or is it something that most or very few?
I would say not most.
Okay.
Very, very few really do it, because it is an involved process. There's a lot. The financial statements as a whole are probably 4 to 5 times as detailed and the information in there as a normal financial statement to meet those standards. Really, the reason for that is one, it's a great feather in your cap, but the main thing is when you go out for bonding or you go out for those, they will look at that certificate of achievement and the fact that you are your financial information is accurate and they can trust it. You generally get lower rates. So it's probably over the years has saved maybe millions of dollars in bonding, in debt service, because you guys have consistently received that award. But common, not common. Yeah. Especially in Idaho. There's not a lot of large cities in Idaho. The smaller cities absolutely won't go for it. In this area, Moscow, Lewiston do. But yeah.
Fantastic. That's awesome.
Any other comments, Scott?
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
All
for
right.
being here.
Well,
Appreciate it, Nick.
as always, we really appreciate working with the city, and we appreciate the entire finance staff. They do a great job, and so kudos to them. And anything we need, they get to us, and they do a wonderful job. And we really appreciate working with you guys. So, thank you.
Thank you.
They're pretty good.
So, Mr. Mayor? I feel like we can make a motion. Are we ready
Yes,
for that?
yes.
I move that we accept the City of Moscow audited annual comprehensive financial report for fiscal year 2025 as presented.
Second. All right, roll call. All right, we'll go this way. Scott.
Aye.
Aye. Sage. Aye.
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 All right. Here we are. All right, moving to number 6, mass notification system, memorandum of understanding with Chief Nickerson. Welcome, Chief. Thank you for being here, and
Thank you.
thanks for talking about something exciting. So this will be good.
Well, I was riveted by the annual.
It's kind of exciting.
I didn't hear anything about it. This is
It's
exciting.
okay, man. This is a safe room. You're good.
Is it exciting to evacuate? I don't know. Some people might say so.
This is an exciting thing.
Yeah. So this MOU is a partnership between the city and the county. I've been working with the disaster services and stuff, and thanks to Mia and her hard work with the attorneys over at the county. Basically, it's just a mass notification for evacuations primarily. So in an emergency event, it's not for everyday communications, notifications, stuff like that. It's strictly for emergency notifications. And previously, the county has had a different system, which basically is pretty large, if you will, for the communities that we have here in the county. So in the research that we did and some of the demos that we did, this program that we were going to go to is one that better fits us. It's used over the Northwest, including the state of Oregon, down in California. So there's some opportunities to see some of those opportunities that we can actually foster into to get some help with or ideas from. But primarily, it's strictly for emergency notification to tell you where to go and where not to go and so forth in a moment's notice. This will be able to, this will be able to be used from our computers in our vehicles or somebody sitting in an office. But it's pretty restricted of who can do it. There's a lot of criteria. You got to go through some classes to do it. So it's not an overburdensome thing, but it is some things that we have to do between the fire department and the PD in particular. There'll be several people administratively, several users, along with the partners over at the county, which would be the disaster services, I think, communication center, and a couple others. So this is a great opportunity, just one more thing to partner with and share the cost with, because it's not something we're going to use hopefully that often, knock on wood. But if we do, in the event of something, that we have that opportunity to do it. So.
Cool. Thank you. Questions? Scott.
It would be, I think everybody with a cell phone's gotten like an Amber Alert or some kind of message like that. Is that something that it'd be on cell phones or it's instant buzzing?
Yeah, this is basically system. This is not a sign up. This is not a sign up subscription type service. This is geofenced. So we can look on a map, draw a circle, draw a square, or we can predefine certain areas. And then it'll push out that notification, whether it's generally or whether it's a specific group in that area. It doesn't matter where your phone's from. If you're in that general area, then you'll get a notification.
Just a comment?
Yeah.
Chief, thanks for being here and presenting this. We had the chance in our community meeting to decide, whether to bring it forth to council and to everybody in the audience and anyone watching from home. Because at first glance, it's like, wow, this is kind of a no-brainer, right? I mean, I feel safely saying that we all agreed that we wanted this. It could have flown through our committee. I think it would have gone through consent without any issue at all. But I think it's really important that people know, that you all have to struggle sometimes communicating. And I think we've been working really hard in the last 5, 6, 7 years to help in that process. And I think this is just another step. And every time we help you, we're helping our whole community and keeping people safer. So I'm really grateful for this, and made for a little longer night for you, but I really appreciate the explanations, and I'm excited to get this going. Thanks.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Chief. I would entertain.
I move we adopt the Paradise Creek Maintenance Program Plan. Oh, wait. So I jumped ahead. I'm like, wait,
Yeah,
wrong. That'll be for next year if we need help, right? Approve the MOU with Lake County. Right? Is that the right one? Thank you.
I'll second.
All right, Evan,
Aye.
Sandra,
Aye.
Sage.
Aye.
Scott, Andrews, and I. So here we go. All right, last up here for regular items on the agenda, we have Paradise Maintenance Creek Program Plan with Tyler Palmer. Thanks for being here, Tyler. Thanks, Chief.
Welcome, Your Honor. Council, happy to be here this evening to discuss something that became all the more pertinent over the course of the weekend. This is rather timely, especially considering how long we've been working on this plan. As I think everybody's aware, we saw record rainfall and record flooding over the course of the weekend. And I think it just highlights the necessity for us to take a more proactive approach with our creek maintenance. Paradise Creek is our primary drainage facility that goes through the city. And one of the dictates of the council is we were listed as an MS4 under the NPDES permit, so a federal permit for our stormwater system, was that we use that opportunity to prop up a utility and proactively maintain our storm sewer system, which is something that really hadn't happened. It'd been entirely reactively maintained, largely just due to lack of resources to maintain it proactively. And so just a little background on this, in recognition of kind of the reason that how we got to where we got to here tonight. This is the top 20 historic crests on Paradise Creek that you're looking at here. The gauge, the USGS gauge that's located on Perimeter Drive in the highway, began reads in 1979. And so it's a 47-year history that we have on Paradise Creek. And the thing that I'd like to point out from this chart is we've got this color coded where you can see that in the lighter color, that represents all of the crests that we've seen in the last 10 years. So of the 20 top crests in the 47-year history of this gauge, you can see how many of them have occurred in the last 10 years. And you'll also notice that 5 of the 6 highest in history have occurred in the last 10 years. This is a pattern that we're seeing. It's a pattern that we've been seeing with a lot of the climate change that we've experienced, that we're seeing less snowpack over the course of the winter. We're seeing we see about the same amount of precipitation, but a lot more of that is coming as rainfall in the spring. When I got to the city of Moscow in 2009, the institutional knowledge that was passed along to me was that a large flood was not possible without snow and ice, that a purely hydraulic event could not generate a large flood on Paradise Creek. In 2012, we saw for the first time that wasn't true. We were all very surprised to see a spring event that came in and kept going up. It kept going up. And that was this 2012 event that you can see right here that reached 10 feet. So in response to the 2019 event, which is right here, our second highest event that we've had, the city sought and was granted a hazard mitigation grant. And with that hazard mitigation grant, we took a hard look at Paradise Creek to say, okay, what can we do? What are the alternatives? Is there infrastructure that we can build that will help remediate the flooding? Are there activities that we can engage in that we can try to mitigate some of the impacts and ameliorate the impacts that we see from these high water events? In summary, the plan made some recommendations. We came away with a good model of the creek. They went through with LIDAR, and we got good elevations and a good model of the creek so we could better understand how it was flowing. It's a relatively flat creek. We've got about 19 miles that it flows basically from the mountain through Moscow until it joins the Palouse River. And it can move a lot of sediment. It's relatively flat and it comes quick off the mountain. And so really it's one of the most reactive creeks in the Northwest. It really comes up quickly. And we saw that the other night. It does not take much for that creek to really come up. And so it can, because of that, it can move a lot of sediment, we saw that with the underpass project the city had proposed to go under US 95, where a lot of that work happened prior to the 2019 flood and a lot of the planning work, and it looked like that was going to be possible. Along comes the 2019 flood and brings in 1.5 feet of sediment that just gets redeposited. And so there's a lot of sediment that moves within that creek. Unfortunately, there was no silver bullet that came out of the hazard mitigation study. There wasn't the one thing that they're like, yeah, you've got, acquire this land and build a big old reservoir and you can easily divert the water. That didn't come out of it. And so what we were left with was a recognition that we really have to deal with what we've got and be realistic about what we've got. And the creek channel is one of the main things that we can do a lot of work in. And so Paradise Creek, as I mentioned, 19 miles flows through the city. It's absolutely critical for our stormwater conveyance. The creek is included in our MS4 permit and our IPDS permit. So it is part of our stormwater conveyance system. It's important for water quality protection, for flood mitigation, for wildlife habitat. And it is an impaired water body under the 303D. It has total maximum daily load requirements on that body of water. There's a lot of regulatory drivers, as I'd indicated. We have our permit. We have compliance with the Clean Water Act. We have the IDEQ total maximum daily load implementation. There's section 404 permits that can be applicable. And without getting into a whole bunch of government acronyms and nomenclature, the point of the matter is there's a lot of rules that we've got to keep as they pertain to the creek. And so we've generated this plan. In looking at this, as we knew we needed to have a more active plan for Paradise Creek, it's complicated because the city doesn't own the ground under Paradise Creek for much of the creek as it flows through town. As anybody who lives in proximity to the creek saw over the course of the weekend, there's a lot of residences that are built in close proximity to the creek. So access is a really big challenge. And so it's something that with no resources and no ability to really tackle this, nobody had really tackled, okay, how do we long-term plan for the creek? How do we do active routine creek maintenance? And it's a pretty Herculean task. And so we knew that when we got the results from the study, we really needed to dive in and it was time to bite the bullet. And with the stormwater utility in place, which was always the plan that with the initial permit of the stormwater utility, we would be doing reconnaissance. We got staff out cleaning lines, cameraing lines, inspecting so that we can start to generate a capital plan, know what we've got so that we can make a good plan for what's coming forward and try and capture those needs. So the plan establishes a formal framework for routine maintenance. So things like post-storm monthly, annual inspections of the creek. And it also separates the creek into 15 segments. And these 15 segments allow us to have some logical termini for different conditions on the creek. Places where, for example, Heron's Hideout might be one section where it's a section where we have access. It's fairly wide. It's a section where we can let wildlife kind of really take full reins there. Beavers can build dams and it can spread out and there's room for that. And it's great for the creek and it's great for the health. But then we have other sections where it's going through a bunch of backyards and we don't own the property and we don't have access. And so there's just different challenges. And so it separates it into 15 segments. Another critical component of this plan is a beaver management policy. That's something that the city really takes seriously, is trying to coexist with beavers on the creek. They predate us here and they can play a really critical role. And so we want to make sure that we have a good plan for how we interact with beavers in the creek. It also includes things like site access planning and then public education and stewardship. So incorporating this into our public outreach programs, helping educate people about the importance of the creek and how to interact with the creek. So the routine maintenance structure, post-storm. So after every storm, we go out and we do a debris inspection, we do erosion checks, check the infrastructure. Monthly, we do culvert inspections, minor sediment removal, and vegetation management. And then annually, it's a more comprehensive assessment, a sediment survey, major vegetation and channel work is what we want to work toward with this. We want to be able to tackle sections and conduct the work necessary within that section. And I'll get into a little bit more details on that as we move forward. These are the sections that you can see here that we've divided the creek into in this plan. And then we've got projects that are prioritized based on risk and conditions. So, each one of these, some of these areas have far fewer impacts if they flood or if there are issues than other sections. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a plan that allowed us in a very logical and rational way to identify the priorities. And it's also a little complicated because it's creek, it all flows. And so if you do, this section here, that water can move in a less obstructed manner, it's just hitting that section there. And so we got to make sure that those are planned out, staged out accordingly so that we don't have a situation where it's like, oh, well, we fixed problem A, but now we've created problems B, C, and D downstream. And so we want to be very careful with that. It's not going to be cheap. This is not a cheap endeavor. These are estimates. We'll certainly be able to refine these numbers, especially after we get through the first round of creek maintenance projects. This is the first time this is going to have happened. The last significant creek shaping project took place, I think, in 2004. It's been a long time. It's been a long time, and there's been a really evolving regulatory climate as it pertains to these type of projects. And so you'll notice that there's some pretty huge variation between some of these sections when it comes to cost. And that really just reflects the level of complication and the level of treatment necessary. Some of these need us to get in there with equipment, reshape the banks, fortify the banks in certain places, revegetate, and all of that has to be done where there isn't existing access. And so that means that we've got to spend the time to coordinate with property owners, acquire easements, potentially acquire rights of way, determine how we can get debris in and debris out. It's not just a matter of, dropping a bulldozer in the creek and letting it run wild. Like we're going to be removing a lot of materials in some cases, bringing materials in other cases. And so we have to really plan out on a pretty defined level. How are we getting in? Where do we need to get out? How much do we need to get out? And really make sure that there's a lot of planning in advance. And that's going to then require a lot of coordination with the folks that are in the neighborhood, in the area where that work has to happen. So it's not an insignificant lift for this, but it's a process that we're excited to get started on because we recognize the necessity, especially in the wake of that 2019 hazard mitigation plan, demonstrating that there really just isn't another option. We can't just retain the water upstream of the city and then slowly release it. That's not an option. So we've got to make sure that we're engaging with this. The structure that is in this plan lays out projects from 2027 to 2041. We will be bringing a utility rate study to the council in the next cycle. And what's reflected in the recommendations from staff and from that committee is stretching these projects out to every other year, trying to conduct a project, which both staff and the rate committee thought was appropriate. One, to ameliorate the rate impacts on Storm. Storm is a small utility, and so the dollar amount doesn't inflate a lot, but on a percentage basis, it can rather significantly as we start to introduce some of these capital needs. And with the complication of a lot of these projects, realistically, we weren't going to be able to, in all likelihood, do one annually anyway. There's going to be a high level of planning that's necessary, especially with this first round. The thing that we're excited about is once we've gone through this first time, we'll have built a playbook. We'll have acquired the easements. The people who follow us will have a lot easier time with this than we're going to have this first time going through. The beaver management policy, I'd like to touch on some of the protocol for the beaver management policy. There's monitoring protocols. We identify sections of the creek where it is absolutely appropriate for beavers to be, for them to build, for them to basically engage undeterred with the environment around them. But then there are other areas where it's really problematic and that we have to identify where those problematic areas are. And then we have a series of options for dealing with beavers as it progresses through the plan. So we have a lot of non-lethal deterrence options. A lot of the things that we'll hear from people is just like they're taking down critical trees, and we have deterrence measures for that. Or there might be a dam that there are concerns about some of the upstream and downstream impacts of a dam, and there's the There are options for example, putting in a pond leveler, and we've done some experimentation on some private property with that, with installing pond levelers. And so there's different approaches, and those are all laid out in the plan, the different BMPs that we can use, the best management practices. And then there's emergency dam breaching standards that are included in this, and also coordination with Idaho Fish and Game. That's the oversight agency that we have to interact with when we're dealing with beavers in the creek. You wouldn't think it was such a complicated thing, but it really is. And there's a lot of emotions around beavers. And so it's something that we really want to make sure that we can clearly articulate why we do what we do and what approach we're taking. And also so that we can be consistent, so that it's not going to vary based on whether an employee's got a 22 and is really excited or not or something. Like, this is not any approach that we want to take. Not that that's ever how we'd go about that, but yeah, we want to make sure that it's all by the book, and we can clearly articulate how we deal with that.
Tyler, just real quick, I know you mentioned it last week. I've already forgotten. How many like beaver families do we have approximately?
We estimate that there are probably somewhere around 10 to 12 dens, with, anywhere from 4 to 6 beavers per den. And so, yeah, there's quite a few that are out. We have some really good spots for them, and there's several areas where they're really beneficial, that they really help out. There's some other places they really love to be that they aren't as beneficial, and we've got to encourage them to move along. But yeah, so about that.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, so the benefits of this entire plan of the city is, one, it just improves our MS4 regulatory compliance. It's going to reduce emergency maintenance costs, improve flood resilience. As you saw in that flood chart, this is not going to eliminate flooding. There's nothing we can do about that. There's only the capacity of the creek is the capacity of the creek, and it's just math. That's just engineering and hydraulics. That's just how it's going to happen. But we hope to be able to have that be far more predictable and make sure that we are minimizing those impacts to the maximum extent that we can. It also supports grant competitiveness and provides a clear capital roadmap so that we can really start that transition toward proactive maintenance of this facility that's so critical for the city's future. So the staff recommendation is that the council adopt the creek maintenance program. And with that, I would be happy to stand for any questions you might have.
All right, questions? Yeah, Sage.
I have several questions, so I don't want to interrupt others' flow of questions if they've got them, but I'll just start with saying thank you so much for this information. Personally, I'm a property owner with 2 properties within a block of the creek, one of which is adjacent, and so I am particularly personally interested in this. Climate change has brought us here, right? Those major flood events. I don't know if that's any coincidence. I think that's common in communities over the last 10 to 20 years. And unfortunately, flooding on the Palouse, if there's to be a natural disaster, this is the one to worry about. It has been, and it will continue to be. And so just to kind of bring weight to this issue, I think, we need to be frank about it, that this is a big deal. My first question for you, Tyler, there is mention several times throughout the plan about kind of owner involvement, owner maintenance. What exactly do you recommend that best look like? Is that, people getting, for example, if someone gets a submersible pump, expecting to redirect water during a flood event, not going to happen. Major water is going to flow where it wants. People want to cut down a tree or trap beavers or that sort of thing. What do you think is the best sort of local resource for owners in managing these events proactively as well as reactively?
That's a really good question, Counselor. And I think one of the things that our staff is excited about with this plan, but will also be a big challenge of this plan, is that there's not a one size fits all because of the way that it's developed around the creek. If we developed with no properties within 20 yards either side, and we had an access road that went right up the side, and I could just roll a piece of equipment right up through there, it would be a different story. But we've got ownership and people right up on the creek. And so inherent in the nature of the challenge is going to be, there's not going to be a machete that we've got to do this with. It's going to be a scalpel. And so each one of these areas is going to have different things that may be asked, or that it's going to require a lot of cooperation. It's not something that we don't have the tool to just go out there and say, here it is, and this is what we're doing, because in many cases we don't have the access. It's going to require cooperation, and it's going to require a lot of coordination. There are some universals, things like don't throw trash in the creek, things like that's, it's not a dumping ground. There's going to be some landscape maintenance and recommendations that come out of that about how you build next to the creek, and what's appropriate and what's not, and what might just be a problem that gets washed downstream, et cetera. So there'll be some things that we can apply with a broader brush, but then there will be a lot of just direct community interaction that'll have to be very custom and specific to the specific stretch of creek. I'm sorry, it's a pretty vague answer, but I'm afraid I don't have more definition than that until we actually dive into each of these sections.
Other questions? Okay, to kind of build on that, so I notice several of the sections are kind of earmarked as, mostly private landowners versus public landowners. In terms of the notification to the public surrounding the specific sections as work is being done, what should people sort of expect prior?
Yeah, I think that what really people can expect prior is maybe an overload of communication. I would anticipate community meetings specific to those sections of creek, especially the ones where we're going to need easements and access and right of way and those types of things. So specific community meetings, typically we try and hold those in a place that's easy for people to get to. So it will be flyers, it will be social media notification, it will be mailers, it will be in-person community meetings where we put out a map. It likely will involve walking the creek with different property owners or anyone who wants to, and just doing a walking tour, talking through the things that we want to do. And then as we generate a plan and get closer to construction, then there will be an even further ramp up in communication about schedules and timing and impact and what people might see. And so it is going to require a lot of communication and a lot of coordination with those local folks. And so it'll be very hands-on as we get into the actual project planning processes.
Okay. Thank you. And I have one more. Sorry to keep going. So this is quite obviously a giant man-made revision to this creek. Has there been a prior project like this for Paradise Creek to your knowledge?
There have. Over time, we've been able to find several different projects that the city had engaged in over time. I think it was largely reactive, or, a grant would become available. And so we've been able to find a few where the city has gone in and done just reshaping, trying to reestablish what would be an appropriate profile, armoring, et cetera. So there have been projects over time. I believe the last one was 2004. It might have been 2001, but I think it was 2004 was the last project of any significance of this type.
Okay, thank you, Tyler.
Tyler, when you talked to committee, you also touched a little bit about the creek doesn't end at the border. And so what kind of talks and works are going on with Whitman County at this point?
We have had coordination with Whitman County. That the elevation kind of is what the elevation is, and it certainly is less restricted as you get out to the state line. One of the biggest points of coordination that we have is that we have had a family of beavers that likes to be just across the Washington line, and where their pool backs up gets into our discharge area from the water reclamation facility, and we have certain measuring equipment that actually has to get critical measurements for our compliance for our permit, that is reliant on that flowing out of the pipe and not being in a pipe that's submerged. And so that's a point of coordination that we've had to have, is just on that activity primarily. That's been the main point of coordination. Certainly as we move forward with this plan and with coordination, we'll continue with our coordination with Whitman County. We coordinate with them on a lot of cross-border aspects like Paradise Path and all of those things. This will primarily impact really just the Moscow stretch, but there will be some points of coordination.
Scott, do you have any-
Couple of questions. Development, we got some emails and some people asked questions about like development on the outside of town. And do you really see that as have any significance to the amount of flooding or the flooding that we've been experiencing?
Really, I can understand the perception. We've had a lot of conversations, for example, with this most recent storm, where we had people that were absolutely convinced that their sewers were backed up, for example, because they hadn't seen water flow into their basement before. And the sewers weren't backed up. It's just, you haven't seen it before because we've never had that much rain in that short a period. And we've never had water this high on ground that was already saturated. And so it was just, that's the water got in. And so that unprecedented thing, I think often is easy to tie to the most visible thing. And sometimes development's the most visible thing. I'm not saying that development could never have an impact, but there are requirements for development, for detention. Those calculations are generated by professional engineers, reviewed by our professional engineers. And so generally we've got a pretty high level of confidence that as development is coming in, they are being required to detain water at the pre-development rate. And so it's a rate that should not contribute to flooding in any way that the bare ground that was there before had contributed to any sort of flooding that we had. Does that answer your question?
I have a few more.
Yeah. Go for it.
Some of the things, just talking to people. I'm not advocating for this one. I'm just saying it, just let you know. Colfax made a giant concrete channel. Was there ever any consideration, because it's so flat and the cost implications? I mean, we're going to be cleaning this out for the next, say, 5 years, and we're probably going to turn around and be doing it for the next 5 years and the next 5 years. Is there any consideration of either in sections or other considerations of channeling? Or
as we get into the specific planning for each of these sections, I don't know what that'll look like. I don't know what recommendations will come out of that. I can tell you that the $5 million estimate to complete this project, and that's, we're looking at every other year, 15 segments, a 30-year project every other year. And then we would just analyze how long it holds up and see if we're coming back to section 1 again and continuing. Would absolutely blow that estimate out of the water. We couldn't get one of these sections. It would not even be close. We would be talking about hundreds of millions of dollars to try and complete a project like that. And then that's if we could get it permitted. I sincerely doubt that that is something that with the regulations currently in place, I would be very doubtful that there would be any chance of getting a permit to make a concrete channel throughout the city, or even for any significant chunk of the city.
just wanted to preface it. That's just what I heard. Okay, want to bring it up.
Asking for a friend.
Last one for the I think it was like $4.4 or $5 million you had there. The funding is, I know in the previous where we spoke, the stormwater fund is continuing to increase based on our fees. Is this funding that's coming out of the stormwater fund that we're acquiring right now?
This funding is not coming out of this. We are not accumulating funds from the stormwater utility that are adequate to cover this activity. This activity is anticipated in the upcoming rate study that will come before the council in the next council cycle. So it'll be coming to committee on the 23rd, and then we anticipate that going to council on April 6th, depending on how the interaction at committee goes. It is anticipated in that rate study. So the rates that are reflected, that are being proposed and that have been reviewed by the Citizen Rate Committee and recommended, reflect this activity, but they reflect this activity on an every other year basis.
Yeah, Evan.
Thanks for the presentation. It's all very relevant, very necessary, needed. I don't think there's any doubt we'll want you to proceed with the plan. My question is, how long you think it will take you to do the initial surveying and assessment to really determine what needs are and what the priorities are? Do you have an idea? Because right now you don't have people and funding technically to do that. So with the plan, we can in fiscal year 27 do the funding, and then you can actually give us an idea of, but do you know how long even it'll take you to come up with a firm idea of what's needed?
If the council decides to adopt what's being proposed in the rate study, and in FY27 we start to accumulate funds toward this, that will allow us to start generating capital toward a project. At that point, we would start on the first prioritized segment and start planning. And so that would immediately start that planning within that FY27 budget year. So our goal would be to have planning, that public outreach and design started in FY27, potentially looking for a project in FY28, FY29 would be the goal, to get that first project kicked off within, just depending on how long. There's a lot of unknowns, how long the public interaction process is going to take, how long, if we have to acquire, there's a lot of that out there, but we don't plan to delay implementation. If the council adopts this plan and then adopts the rates that would support this plan, then we plan on starting.
Another thing, because it's an impaired water body, do we have a sense of which of the impairments, and there's several, that really we will prioritize, or will that also be different from segment to segment? I know right away that infrastructure is going to be the top, protecting the water treatment plant and bridges. But beyond that, are we looking at sediment, mostly debris removal? Do you have a sense of what the priority might be?
This plan is largely focused on sediment and debris, on anything that would obstruct the flow. Much of the other impairments, like phosphorus, for example, in Paradise Creek, those are dealt with through our permit largely. There are aspects to this plan, things like revegetation in areas and appropriate vegetation in areas that can help with those things, certainly. But our primary focus with this plan is really just the hydraulics of the creek, making sure that it's flowing as is appropriate.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, well, no, it's not a public hearing, and so we'd be happy to stick around and talk afterwards, but we're just reviewing the plan, and with that, I'm looking for action.
Sandra already made a motion.
Should I just follow up on that? Thanks, Evan. Now I move that we adopt Paradise Creek Maintenance Program Plan.
And I'll second that.
All right, so start with Scott.
I have a question before, right? So if we're adopting this, but we're also going to be voting in 2 weeks or the next council for the funding. This is just the plan, but we're not necessarily.
I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you, Counselor. You're not authorizing funds with this. And even with the rate study, you're authorizing us to collect rates that would be in accordance with the plan, but annually through the budgeting process, council will appropriate funds. And so that'll be an annual process. A current council can't dictate what a future council will do as far as funding goes in that regard. And so each year we will bring forth a funding package, just like we do with all the other processes of the city and the utilities and the capital plan. Each year we bring a capital budget that is adopted by the council annually. And so the council will have an opportunity to review annually the program and determine if it's something that they want to continue to fund.
No, it's a good question. So, yeah. All right. With that, we'll start with Scott. Scott.
Aye.
Sage.
Aye.
Sandra.
Aye.
Evan.
Aye.
And Drew is an aye. So, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We'll now move into reports. It's time for council members to report on what they've been engaged in from a their duty side of things. And so I'm going to start with Sandra.
It was a oddly slow week for me. I subbed in for Bryce and went to transportation, and they had received a letter, much like council had, with concerns about some traffic issues around basically the Lena Whitmore area. And they were a little surprised because they'd done this study just a couple years ago and felt like they were in a pretty good place. But the streets came and talked and helped answer some questions. And they said, well, we can look at a couple more things and review. So Streets is going to put together some more thoughts and not necessarily programming, but review studies and see if studies are necessary and go from there. And probably go back to transportation, and then we may potentially have something in the future or not. It just depends on what they come up with. But I will say it made me feel good that they were also a little surprised to have this come up again, because the study had already been done not long ago and things were as needed. So yeah, and that was it. But on a side note, I have to add that some folks have been following the animal cruelty case, and Ruby is now with a foster to adopt family, and I got to help transport her the other day, and that was pretty cool. So
Awesome. We'll go to Sage.
Oh, goodness. Well, the last month has been personally a whirlwind for me. As mentioned in a prior meeting, I welcomed my firstborn daughter into the world. So, yeah, things have been exciting and very eventful personally. So that meant that I was out of town for about 3 weeks, missed some commission meetings, but I did attend while I was back in town over the last week, the planning and zoning meeting. Mike Ray and Dennis Wilson touched on this earlier, but yeah, discussions of duplex code amendments continue. Next meeting on March 25th. At this time, I think Sandra stepped in for me for Human Rights Commission. Thanks for stepping in and doing
that's
that.
a very happy reason. Luckily, another little human to have some rights. I love it.
That's right. And I'll be for sure at the upcoming meeting tomorrow for Human Rights Commission. So yeah, reports otherwise, don't have much to say, just a lot going on.
That's understandable. Evan.
Yeah, I have a couple, and also I'll mention tomorrow at 6 o'clock, the Sustainable Environment Commission will meet here in this building. Then Tree Commission met on March 3rd, and their next meeting will be April 7th at 5 o'clock in this building. But Tree Commission was mainly getting themselves ready for Arbor Day. Arbor Day is coming up in April, and the celebration of it will be April 24th, hosted by the University of Idaho, and the Arbor Day or the Tree Commission will be tabling there. And they also discuss dates for tabling at Farmers Market, both in May and September. And when they table, they usually have gifts to give away, and that's seedlings. So you want to be sure to go visit them. I also attended Fair and Affordable Housing on March 5th. Their next meeting will be April 2nd at 5:15 if you want to go. But the March 5th meeting, we were uncertain about whether or not during April, which is Fair Housing Month, we'll be able to host the annual Renters' Rights and Landlord Responsibility Conference. And some pieces have fallen together in place since then. It looks like probably April 22nd. We will be able to do that because there's been some help with funding from other sources. And so when I last reported, I said it probably wasn't going to happen, and now I'm going to renege on that and say it probably will happen. So that's good news for that. Otherwise, they are concerned about state legislation that may affect their literature and their stand on various housing issues. So they're waiting, like a lot of us, on the end of the legislative session to even talk about things within their committee. So yeah, it's a very fascinating commission right now because of so many things being up in the air. So I do invite you to attend on April 2nd, and that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Scott.
Thank you. I was able to attend the Coffee with the Legislature with Representative Mitchell and McCann, which, if you've never been to one, I think it's an amazing opportunity to talk to the people who are changing the laws and things about the state of Idaho that impact everybody on a daily basis. And you get one-on-one. I mean, I think there's about 25 people there. So you get a lot of feedback and a lot of information from them, and get a hold of them accountable. So I thought it was an amazing event. The Art Commission, we did not have a quorum, but they are busy with selection committees for some of their installations and artwork that they'll be commissioning over the next year. I was part of the ITD working group, so I got a kind of a preview of some of the information that they're going to provide later this month. And if you have interest in the next 50 years of the city of Moscow and transportation in, through, and around it, I suggest you attend, because they're planning things that impact today, tomorrow, and as long as I'll be around. So I think it's a very good step instead of waiting and being, geez, why'd they do that? It's a very amazing thing that they do and get as much public input. And then the last thing, congratulations to the men's and women's basketball teams for the University of Idaho. Both of them made the NCAA tournament. They'll be playing Thursday and Friday. So that is an amazing thing. I don't remember the last time it's ever happened that both men's and women made it in the same year. So congratulations to them.
Harvard of the West.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's great. So for me, first part of the month is always busy. So I attended the Farmers Market Commission. Those folks are in full swing, getting policy procedures and getting ready for jurying coming up here in a couple of weeks. Grateful for really engaged commission and staff really getting after it and making sure the farmers market's awesome for all of us to enjoy. Also attended the EMS and fire meeting. Really grateful for our volunteers that keep us safe and healthy, and they're very efficient and talking about ways for training and really looking out for the next year of planning. And so great group of folks there. Also attended MURA, Moscow Urban Renewal Agency. Really, we reviewed our annual and approved our budget for the year, and it's great. It's healthy. We're looking at a variety of other things with projects coming up that we're excited to talk about later on this year. But we're just waiting for a couple of items that we're working on, and so looking forward to a report later on into summer where those items are going. Other than that, also attended coffee with the legislatures. Good opportunity. Don't always agree, but I'm glad for the opportunity to talk and to advocate for Moscow. I'm glad that we have that venue. And then also, I'd just like to reiterate also what Scott has mentioned about Idaho Transportation, ITD. We recently have heard that, we need to be more transparent about this. I don't know how much more transparent we can be. We had them here this evening. I have received 2 flyers, just not this year, but over multiple years that I've lived in Moscow. And really the only thing that's missing is the people going to these events. And so get out there. And when you come here in a year telling us why we're doing it, I'm going to ask you to go to another meeting. So it's good. We're glad for those comments. So with that, anything from staff?
No additional items from staff, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Thank you.
Not roll call, but you need to have a.
Oh,
Aye.
aye. Yeah. Thank you.